Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock of the Emerald Planet and Emerald Planet TV. We come to you on a week-to-week basis from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technology, services, and products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And as we have a planet of 9 billion people by 2038 and possibly 12 to 13 billion by the end of this century, how are we going to be able to take care of all these people on planet Earth? And that's what Emerald Planet's all about. We come to you looking at the solutions, the best practices from around the globe as we create the Emerald Planet. Hello, welcome to the Emerald Planet. We're making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And seeing the long-term impacts of climate change. We're glad to have you. Thank you for being with us. Looking at restoration of nature, being in a built environment, trying to manage the quality, actually not just manage it, but increase the quality of the land, the air, and the water is something that really is as much art as it is science. And it's very important that we do this because roughly 80% of the American population live in urban areas, and the world itself more and more is becoming urbanized. And we have a gentleman who's sharing his best practices. This is Kurt Moser. He's an ecologist, also the director of 4 Mile Run Foundation right outside of Washington, D.C. And Kurt, you know, it's just amazing how you're doing all of this, trying to bring this balance between nature and all living beings, in other words, the plants, the humans, the bionome, the microorganisms, and yet allow it to be just completely natural where people just can come in and kind of, you settle with it, but it just kind of washes over you in a very, you know, nice, subtle way. How do you do that? And then how do you communicate that to the community that you're helping to create this and we're going to keep doing this because, again, we need this balance between the built environment and nature?
Yeah, well, for one, we have them work with us. We have them volunteer with us. We give them opportunities to do the activities that help that restoration along. And I would say that it is a unique urban ecosystem that it is not natural in the way that some distant headwater stream, maybe up in the mountains might be. And it requires of us that we be involved. It requires that we take part in trying to make some space for nature, and you see the difference that it makes. I've lived in the area for more than 20 years, and I would say that it is quite noticeable in my neighborhood, which is close to 4 Mile Run. It's quite noticeable how much more wildlife we see there today than 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Look at this little critter, and I'm going to ask this question about this, how the public becomes involved with the environmental impact and really protecting, you know, what many people now says is their stream, their park. You know, everybody's now claiming ownership on this. You know, 15, 20 years ago, they wanted to give it to somebody else. Now everybody wants to have it because really the leadership, you know, people just like you that are doing this delicate balance. But this little critter that we're seeing here, more and more of these are now actually coming back. And is that a success story? And if yes, how is that a success story?
Well, that one's a really special case. This was a photograph that was taken when we were having a litter cleanup with students from George Mason University. And one of them had a camera with him, Ben Rhodes, and Ben took a picture of that frog. And we looked at it and we realized that was either a gray tree frog or it was a Cope's gray tree frog. And the next night we went out and listened, because the only way you can really tell the difference without a DNA analysis kit is by listening to the calls. It turned out it was a Cope's gray tree frog, and the Cope's gray tree frog had not been documented at 4 Mile Run for a century.
A century?
A century.
My goodness.
In the 1920s, it had been noted there, and it had not been noted there since. Now, I'm not saying that it hasn't been there ever since, but the fact that we know it's there, the fact that we're able to document that it's there, it means a lot to be able to say, oh yeah, this is the first time we've observed this that anybody noticed in 100 years, and it's pretty fantastic.
Now looking at it, so this goes to my question on the benefits of restoration. Having this example, and we're going to have some others of this, how are these the animals, the critters as we can call them, I guess affectionately, how is that an example of where we're going as far as restoration of nature in the United States and possibly even around the globe to bring back many of these species that we thought were lost?
Well, I think it's that we're realizing that we can make room for these things. Even in cities, we can make room. We probably can't have herds of bison running through 4 Mile Run, but there's plenty that we can have. And the fact that we are starting to be better about practices that allow that to happen. I think a lot of this is due to the fact that people are planting native plants in their backyards, planting butterfly gardens. And when you do that, you have the basis of a larger food web. If you've got butterflies, you'll have something that eats butterflies. And if you have something that eats butterflies, you'll have the other thing that eats the things that eat butterflies. Right. You'll always have more to see, more to appreciate, more to enjoy when you can make some room for it. And I think this is true everywhere where people live. You can make some room, maybe not for everything. We probably don't want mountain lions. We probably won't see mountain lions, but we are seeing coyotes starting to turn up in the area.
Yeah, and foxes on a very regular basis.
Lots of foxes.
I'm seeing foxes, raccoons, opossums in the area where I am, and 5-10 years ago, would never see one, but they're there now, and they're quite healthy. That's the thing. It's really nice that they're actually living and they're living well in that area. But looking at the birds of prey coming back into areas, this really is a hairbringer of other good things to come as far as nature and the balance in the environment. What is this telling us when you have these higher order animals and birds coming back into communities?
Well, first it tells us that it works. The example of the osprey, which the picture was showing a moment ago, they come up to fish in 4 Mile Run. That's where they look for their food, and they're very reliable. Come April, when they are back from migration, we'll see them again, and we'll see them taking fish out of 4 Mile Run. They don't nest at 4 Mile Run, they nest on the Potomac River, and then they come to 4 Mile Run to fish. 50, 60 years ago, there were no fish in 4 Mile Run. 4 Mile Run was well documented as a dead stream. And one of the things,
like the Anacostia River.
Well, like the Anacostia was some time ago. I mean, the Anacostia also is in a path of recovery. And part of what made that possible was we adopted better and more stringent requirements for wastewater treatment. So the Arlington wastewater treatment plant, the Alexandria plant on Cameron Run, they do a much better job of cleaning the water before returning it to the stream in a way that was not happening in the 1940s. And when you look at video footage of 4 Mile Run in 1949, there's not a living thing in the water, nothing, and nothing could live in the water.
That's amazing.
And then you wouldn't have the birds of prey.
Yeah. Now looking at this estuary we're looking at right now, how is this different from what it was, say, 20, 30, 40 years ago?
Well, 20, 30, 40, it's a lot cleaner. The water quality is better. There is, in the last several years, both the city of Alexandria and Arlington County have done restoration work on both sides of the run to allow there to be more habitat and more ecological function. And so that looks a lot different. It also looks different from what it looked like 100, 200 years ago. A couple hundred years ago, that lower part of 4 Mile Run was mostly a wide open embayment. It was deep water. You could paddle a boat through there any time of day, high tide, low tide. And today, it's much more constricted. And the part that used to be a wide embayment has been filled in and built on top of. And that happened through the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, and onward.
How does the 4 Mile Run Conservatory Foundation aid in what we're just talking about right here, about this restoration of the two cities and the 4 Mile Run? How does that really help?
Well, we try not to get in the way. And we also try to make sure that we're helping to maintain those areas, helping to make sure that invasive plants aren't taking over. And then where there are opportunities, doing things like tree planting, getting volunteers out to plant more native trees and trees that are good habitat, and ones that are fitting for Lower 4 Mile Run.
Removing invasive species, but also taking out all the flood, debris. Why is that so important, and how do volunteers aid and assist in doing that?
Well, I mean, one of the reasons it's important is that some of the litter, the trash that turns up in 4 Mile Run and it comes off of the streets and through the storm drain system, a lot of that is plastic, a lot of that is single-use plastic, and a lot of it breaks down and ends up breaking into small particles, and it goes out into the Potomac River and out into the Chesapeake Bay, and it becomes a problem for animals. It becomes a problem for things that eat it instead of food, and it is definitely recognized as a problem of a rather large scale.
Now this is really a global issue.
It is a global issue. One of the things about 4 Mile Run that's really helpful is that because it's right at the lower part is at the tidal extent, a lot of the trash kind of hangs out there for a little while before it heads out to the Potomac. So if we catch it there, we're preventing a lot of it from ending up in the water. But one of the most important things we can do is encourage people not to use the single-use plastics, not to use, not to have that kind of wasteful mentality. And so we've done projects, worked with the City of Alexandria to get projects to happen to install water bottle and jug filling stations in the athletic fields in the city and at 4 Mile Run Park, to make it so that it's easy for people to make good choices. It's easy for people to bring a reusable bottle because they know there's a place to fill it.
That's like DC Water, and maybe this is where this origin of this, but do the tap. I love that. Now it's on all their trucks. Do the tap. Forget plastic bottles. I think that's on there as well. Kick the habit.
Kick the habit.
Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, the habit is...
We've talked about that a little bit, but let's talk about that.
Yeah, our campaign was called Kick the Habit, and we were just trying to get people to get out of the notion that, a single-use water bottle is the normal thing that you do. They have their place. There are times when they're appropriate, and then there are lots of times when we get so used to them that we think that they're appropriate, when really there are alternatives, or there should be alternatives. And at all of our volunteer events, we provide water for people to refill bottles. We don't use single-use plastic, and we try very hard to avoid that. And I think if a lot of people did that, and the more people do it, the better off we all are.
Kick the habit plus volunteerism, cleaning up the riverbeds, river sides. Why is that so important as we're moving forward through the 21st century, going towards 2050?
Well, we need people to know what a proper city should look like. And we need people who can commit to doing what it takes to make our cities thrive, to make them beautiful, and to have them be more biodiverse.
Looking at this, I'm going to go out on this photograph right here. Why is this an example of where we're going in the future as far as 4 Mile Run, but all the nature areas in a built environment?
Well, I certainly hope it is the way that we're going all over the country and all over the world. I think having people who are engaged in taking care of the environment and being good stewards of our environment, it's what's necessary. It's absolutely necessary in our world.
And it takes good leadership like you, Kirk Moser. Thank you for being with us. Ecologist, Director, 4 Mile Run Foundation. I'm leaving this up here as far as all this trash removed. Very important as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.